getting to know Treasure Hooton on Pro Cuddle Hustle podcast. Hello, welcome back, my beautiful listeners. And if you're brand new here, hi, my name is Felicity. I am going to become your favorite podcast host. Don't ask me how I know, I just do. I hope you've been having a lovely week or weekend. My last weekend was quite rough. I will not go into details here, but I will on Patreon. For today's episode, I interviewed the lovely Treasure during June of 2023. Treasure's pronouns are they, them, and he, him. Treasure and I are both professional cuddlers. I have been a professional cuddler since 2018 and a podcast host since 2019. Treasure is the first person I've interviewed for this podcast who lives outside of the United States. Treasure Hooton is on a mission to improve human connection. They recently uploaded a video to Instagram with the caption, "Is it sad to use cuddle therapy? No. It's sad that society doesn't serve your needs properly and then tries to deny you a perfectly good solution that is available through cuddle therapies." So please watch the whole video. I will share that to my story on Instagram. Their company, Embrace Connections, helps humans connect better using movement and touch-based practices. Whether it's dancing with a stranger, being buried in a cuddle puddle, or co-regulating in a tight embrace, the core purpose and value is feeling comfortable connecting with others in an intimate, vulnerable way, being human together. We are working towards a world where people communicate their needs and desires, are welcomed and supported by community, and feel secure and loved in their close relationships. Treasure channels a background in partner dance, acro yoga, partner acrobatics, contact improv, massage, playing, fighting, tantra, rope, etc. We have a lot in common. I am also an acrobat. I have been trained in massage. I've also been trained in rope. I'm actually going to a shibari class tonight. But Treasure also has an engineering background, so Treasure works through an engineer's systematic lens to yield a wide range of offerings that include connection workshops, connection coaching, cuddle parties, cuddle therapy, team building workshops, and more. All of their links will be in the description. Let's start the interview. How do you say cuddling in your language? We're stuck in legal limbo because sex work isn't decriminalized yet. Why is there a Wikipedia page for cuddle parties, but not for professional cuddling? No, Felicity, it's facilitator, not felicitator. It's not a replacement for therapy, but it is therapeutic.
Hi, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with me. I'm sure it's a lovely day in Bristol.
You have no idea. The sun has been beaming down on all of England over the last couple of weeks, and I've been lapping it up with a friend visiting from out of town.
So my audience already knows who I am, but they don't know you yet. So please introduce yourself.
So my name is Treasure. I am Canadian, but I live in the UK. I am, among other things, a cuddle therapist. I host cuddle parties. I do workshops about human connection. All the things I do in my life, my personal life and professional life, are all centered around human connection, and especially through touch and movement-based practices. I do partner dance, partner acrobatics, acro yoga, massage, playing, fighting, tantra. It's a whole medley of things.
That's a really poetic way of describing it. Whenever people tell me, oh yeah, I spoke to my parents or my cousin or best friend or spouse or whatever about you and your job, I'm like, which job? Please be more specific, because I can't remember every single thing that I do. How did you narrow down? I'm sure you had like a laundry list of names for your business. So how did you narrow it down to Embrace Connection?
I did spend some time on the name. It didn't just emerge in a dream or anything. I asked a lot of peers for advice, just lists of words that were evocative, and I wrote them all down, and then I paired them up and tried to see which ones would resonate with me. In the end, it was a housemate who came up with Embrace, I think. As soon as I heard it, I was thrilled about it because it's so many things. It's a verb and a noun, like to hug someone. It's also about welcoming in, being open to new things. That's sort of a mindset thing. So it's got both aspects. It's both the physical act of being in contact with somebody, a dance embrace as well as a hug embrace, and also the mental side of things, the emotional side of being open to development and change and growth.
That's beautiful. I did have several roommates when I became a professional cuddler. I never told anyone that I was a professional cuddler, much less started my own, domain website for it. Did you tell your roommate that you're a cuddle professional before you signed the lease? Did you have to come out to them later? How was that process?
So I'm relatively new to the industry. I've been doing it for about 1 year, and I've been living here for longer than that. When I moved here, I was an office professional. I was work from home, and I managed a team team, and we had projects and clients and timescales and things like that. It was a very different world. I had for a long time known that the legacy I want to leave on the world is in the realm of movement and touch and connection, but I didn't really understand. I didn't really realize how I would do that. So it took me some months to figure it out. It was actually on my first date with my current girlfriend that I learned about cuddle therapy. She'd done an online course in it and never had actually used it. And I thought, oh, that's good. I could do that. It was still a couple months after that while I was building my website, building my brand, running some trial sessions of a few different types of offerings with some peers in my community and refining everything. I was open with my housemates along the way. I've never been ashamed of what I do. I think that's a part of it. If you approach the topic with confidence and you express it as if it's a very normal thing, then people warm up to it very easily. They think, oh, well, if this person's so confident about this thing, which I find initially to be quite strange, then it can't be that weird. And then they just go along with it. Whereas if you sort of are more hesitant, or you are more nervous around it, and you talk around it and you hide it, then people suspect it a little bit. They think, well, what's really going on with this? Like, what is this person trying to hide?
I'm just so fascinated by your story because our beginnings are just so vastly different. I am so fascinated by the fact that you've been doing this for only a year and you've already been featured on your local news.
Yeah, I mean, I think some things are just lucky, being in the right place at the right time. I went pretty viral last summer. Before work had really taken off, I had enough work and I had enough local exposure in terms of websites that were offering where I could offer my service. And there was a local news agent that, like a lifestyle news reporter, that found cuddling and found me and hadn't heard of it before, and so decided it was newsworthy. Maybe if they knew about the cuddling profession a little bit more and they would have known that this is not a novel thing, they might not have decided to write a news story about it. But because it was new to them, they wrote a piece which appeared online. And then the way that the news cycle works in the UK is, for lifestyle stuff anyways, is that other websites are looking at what other areas are posting about, and so somebody else picked it up. And then that got distributed more widely. Like you say, it's actually not local news. The ITV's this morning is UK-wide morning programs, very, very popular. They saw the news story and they decided they wanted to run with it, and I definitely wasn't going to say no. That was a great experience. And from there, it actually got picked up internationally. So there were news stories in the USA, in India, Pakistan, Qatar. It was a bit much, really. And I was getting contacted by people all around the world saying, do you offer services in India? No, I don't. Would you like to come and do an India trip? And I was like, maybe in a couple of years, but let me give it some time to develop in the UK first. And I had people saying, can I work for you? No, I really don't have the resources to hire more people, sponsor people immigrating to the UK from overseas. What I'm really glad, though, and this is something that I think is really important, is that, because I want to acknowledge that people who've been doing this for much longer than me probably actually deserve more attention, global attention, than I did for what I have received for the little effort I put in. The impact around the world is that it helps to elevate the view of cuddling as a profession, brings more visibility to it, and hopefully brings more work and more attention to other cuddle professionals in their cities and their countries, ultimately for the greater good.
I do agree with you in that people who have been doing this longer do deserve that kind of attention, but I also want to validate you because there are people who stop doing this every single day. I recently interviewed somebody and I said, oh yeah, I would love to know if there are any professional cuddlers in Panama. And my interview guest said, actually there is. They're on Cuddleist. Here, let me send you their information. And I'm like, oh, I literally checked their Cuddleist profile this morning and it said, sorry, page not found. And I'm like, dang, that was only like a 1 week time span. I was going to reach out to this person and ask them, what is it like to cuddle in Panama? But I don't know if they want to talk about the cuddle industry anymore because their profile is gone. If you decide to stop doing this in the near future, your story is still worth telling, even if you had a short stint.
Well, I'm not walking away from it just yet. I'm enjoying it. Things are growing. I mean, you'll remember from your first years that, like, at the beginning it's tougher, and then as you build a brand and gain more recognition and understanding, it starts to get easier. So I'm on that journey. I'm building a bigger brand. So Embrace Connections is not just about hugging. It's about human connection through a few different modes. It's possible that I'm going to start to focus more on other things over cuddling. Embrace Connections is not going away. Like, this is something that I'm very, very passionate about. It's my ikigai. Do you know the Japanese concept of,
Oh yes, I have a book
you have
about
the book?
ikigai somewhere on my bookshelf.
Yeah, I'm really dedicated to making it work.
I admire your dedication. I noticed you have a studio in Bristol where you host cuddle parties. Was it difficult to find a venue that will let you regularly host cuddle parties?
This one fell into my lap. Really, it's not a very well known space in Bristol, but it is perfect for cuddle parties. The owner who runs it is really lovely. I think she doesn't really know exactly what she's got, the value of it. It works for me right now, and I'm not going to try and ruin this really nice relationship we have. Yeah, she runs a choir, and they use it as a practice space. A lot of the week, it's not really occupied. It's very nice. You can see in the background of some of my promotional pictures. It's got really nice decor. It comes with about 100 cushions as well, which is really helpful. I don't own that kind of material.
That does sound really nice. How much were you taught about consent when you were growing up?
It's a great question. I'm curious to ask my parents this question and to know how much they treated the topic with intentionality as a specific thing. A lot of the conversations that we have these days around consent use fairly modern language and just weren't really a part of our upbringing, which is not to say that we didn't have the concepts of consent and respect for others. But the conversation in modern times, I think, happens relatively differently, especially in the broader culture. What I'm trying to say is I don't remember having very specific conversations around consent, but I definitely was raised in a way where my focus and attention was on other people's well-being. So understanding what they actually needed and wanted in any situation was impressed as a very important thing on me. As long as you're operating with the other person's with their best interests at heart and even communicating by asking with them about it, then you're going to land in an area of consent because you're only going to do things that you want to do. And if you're doing only things that they want, then you're going to be there. But that's without kind of using a lot of the language of consent. So I think I may have ended up there as a happy outcome. Now I see things more explicitly and differently now.
I wish I was taught about consent a lot more when I was a child. A majority of what I learned as an adult from honestly strangers on the internet. Thankfully, I am developing more intimate relationships with those people besides social media mutuals. I did notice something on your social media. You blur the faces of other people in your promotional material, which gives you 2 thumbs up from me. I have researched extensively the cuddle industry in various countries. I forget which country, but I remember, what was it, Thailand? I remember coming across this one group that hosted monthly cuddle parties at a coffee shop, and I think they used pictures of Faye Wyatt without her permission in all of their promotional material. Do you know who Faye Wyatt is?
Maybe recognize the name, but I don't personally know her.
Okay, she's a very well-known professional cuddler in the United States. And so I was like, this makes me feel some type of way. If a group in another country was hosting monthly cuddle parties and they were just using a photo of my face because I am like a mildly popular professional cuddler in my country, I would
You're
feel
a
some type of way.
celebrity.
Well, first of all, everyone should know about consent, but I think us as cuddle professionals, we should hold ourselves to a higher standard when it comes to consent. Using photos of other professional cuddlers, I presume without their consent, leaves a sour taste in my mouth.
That makes sense to me. I give participants, I tell them that if they're going to appear in promotional materials, that their faces are going to be blurred. But I also give people a chance to opt out of photos entirely, even with the blurred faces, which sometimes can be a bit constricting, but that's just the way it is. That's what we do.
I want to talk more about the acro yoga, the partner dancing, and all that wonderful stuff because I myself am an acrobat and I don't often meet other professional cuddlers who are also acrobats. I'm pretty open with my local acrobatic community about all of my jobs from the sex work to the professional cuddling because thankfully I live in an area where, okay, it's liberal, which has its ups and downs, but I would say there are a lot of leftists where I live. A lot of the acro gyms in my area, they're kid friendly. A majority of their classes are meant for children, but the owners of these places are totally chill with the staff talking openly about fringe things on the internet like polyamory, burlesque, all the other fringe things.
I'm for it. Oh, but also having conversations about things isn't necessarily unfriendly to children. Like it's education really. Like understanding about things that exist in the world is opening their minds. It depends on what you do with that. Whether you're coercing people into trying things that maybe they shouldn't be trying yet, or whether you're ascribing judgments or values to things. I'm not going to go into child rearing advice because I do not have kids.
In February and January of 2020, I did volunteer at my local acrobatic gym. I would just watch over the children between the ages of 5 and 13, and I really do miss working in childcare because I love kids. At the beginning of every acrobatic lesson, me and another teacher would teach the kids about consent. I am so glad that children these days are learning about consent as young as 5 years old.
People teach consent workshops. They teach consent as a standalone thing, and I don't love it mainly because it actually is integrated into everything. I run lots of different workshops. I do partner dance stuff. I do partner acrobatics things. I do rope workshops as well. I don't personally call them consent workshops, but they're all about consent. They're just being with people and treating each other well and doing things together, doing things that we both want to do. They're all secretly teaching good consent practices. But I think I'm more likely to sort of get buy-in, get people to engage with them when they think that they're learning some fun activities that they can practice with people.
On average, your workshops are about 3 hours long, correct?
The cuddle parties I host are 4 hours, which includes some time to arrive and land in the space and have a cup of tea, because we're in England and the first thing you do is you always have a cup of tea. It includes as well a little bit of cleanup and getting out at the end. I have the space booked for 4 hours, and we do try and make the most of the whole thing. Other workshops I run are 1 or 2 or 3 hours.
Where I live, often go to rope, kinbaku, shibari workshops. Those workshops tend to be about 3 hours long. I love how I live in a region where there's such variety with rope workshops, because there are some 2.5 hour longs where it's just the lecturer lecturing the entire time. And then there are other ones that are 3 hours long where it's very, very hands-on approach. They teach you how to do something and then you attempt it with the rope on yourself and with a partner. What are your rope workshops like? Because if I go to Bristol, I am going to take a rope workshop from you.
Thank you. Yeah, you're very welcome in Bristol. So I'm not currently doing commercial rope workshops in Bristol. I do it at festivals sometimes. It's that kind of environment. I also have a private rope jam group where it's sort of a peer-led sort of thing. Eventually I might start teaching rope. But in general, the kinds of workshops I run, I always just try and be as hands-on and practical as possible. I think it's the best way to learn skills. So you actually try things and practice them and then fail and then understand what went wrong and then go back and fix it, rather than just thinking that you know what's going to happen. And then as soon as you try it, you realize you don't. And then you're stuck at home, unable to problem solve. But also all of these things I'm doing, they're connection based and they're communication based, and the value comes from actually doing it with someone. So I want to give people as much time as possible to get stuck in. I think that's what they're really there for. I would rather have a little bit less technique and less theory and more application and connection and play. I think that's what people want.
So what festivals and conventions have you taught at?
So I'm a burner. I've been to a number of different burns, and I always offer rope there. I actually learned for the first time at a burn in 2018. So then I went home and I learned a bunch from the internet, practiced a bunch, and then came back the next year, and I was the one who was leading the workshop. I was giving back to the community. I do a really nice rope and dance workshop where you tie a little harness, or you just use the rope loose in your hands and use that as a way to dance with somebody. Beautiful, very creative, very, very fun.
I've taken a rope dance lesson, but it was all virtual. So we were all just on Zoom, like struggling to put the rope on us all the while we're like spinning and twirling around. So I've never done that with partner.
My personal style when I'm tying rope with someone is again about the connection and about movement. So it's not a static thing. It's not like just apply rope to a human shape that happens to be breathing and then we're done. It's very much a sort of a collaborative experience where it actually starts before I even pick up the rope. There's a connection element, there's a co-regulation bit, and then we slowly introduce the rope, we slowly apply the rope, and the whole time it's a movement practice. And as we go, there'll be moments of dance, of slow movement, collaborative movement. Now the restrictions and the constraints of being tied up. Yeah, so I'm getting a bit lost in it because I really enjoy it. It is a whole other thing. It's not what I'm doing professionally at the moment.
I'm glad you know what is fun to you, because so many of my cuddle clients, they're like, I don't really have hobbies. And I go, wait, you don't know what makes you happy? And they're like, yeah, I'm taking a really big leap booking you. And I normally respond with, well, I'm glad you're booking me, but I cannot be your only source of joy. You gotta go out on your own and find what makes you happy. If any of that includes dancing or rope or other kinky stuff, I would like to think I'm a wealth of knowledge. There are so many things that are just waiting for you to discover them.
What they need is kind of a life coach to help them unpack their desires and also then work towards exploring them and achieving them, which is not necessarily a part of a cuddle therapy session. I personally enjoy that sort of thing as well. Like a part of the rest of the stuff I do is more of a coaching modality. Specifically, I like to focus on relational issues. If people come to me because they're lonely, like, yes, it's nice to have some cuddle therapy, but also I want to try and empower them and help them figure out how to get back on their feet and get integrated into different communities and find hobbies and find people to do them with. So I call it connections coaching. It's a movement touch-based modality, but also it's very much results focused.
Yeah, I don't like being asked, well, what do you think I should do? Because I am so scared of recommending something that they end up not liking. I'll admit there have been times where a friend will recommend a movie or a TV show or a book and I end up not liking it, but then I'm scared to tell them that I didn't like the thing that they liked so much. I fear that I'm severing a connection.
That sounds like, yeah, a whole thing to unpack, which we shouldn't do right now. So what's interesting about that too is that it holds you back from doing stuff which you might enjoy, or it holds you back from helping other people in ways that they might enjoy. Ultimately, there may be less value achieved because of this blockage that you have. I think you are good communication, so I believe you would be able to like work your way through things if they didn't enjoy the thing, or if you don't enjoy their thing. I have faith in you.
I am just so glad that you prioritize connection above all else, because the dance community, and I'm not just talking about acrobats, but the dance community at large, there's definitely a fraction of people who are dancing because they want to win gold medals in competitions and they're allowed to have that prerogative. But I don't think, okay, there's a part of me that's like, we should not rank prerogatives, but then there's another part of me that's like, connection should be the number one prerogative. I think people should have the freedom to make their own choices and decisions, but also connection is why we do art in the first place, not just dance. Art as a whole is just a medium for us to connect with one another.
Yeah, we're human beings. We're social creatures. We need to have connection in our lives in whatever form that takes. And yeah, our different preferences and our different styles will lend themselves to different modes of connection. But at the end of the day, we've got to be connecting with people. Dance is a great way to do it. Such a great way to do it. Dance was my route into everything else that I do. And I don't really know how I found my foothold in dance, to be honest. Like I was studying engineering. I wasn't the nerdiest of nerds, but I was up there. Somehow I did have some fluidity in my movement. Although I do look back at how I remember dancing then, and I wasn't great. When you start, you never are. But I stuck with it. And then from there, everything else followed. I'm so grateful to that.
I am glad that you had a good experience when you were interviewed by that nationwide news station, because I've tried doing the whole mainstream news interview thing and I did not like it. I strictly stick to podcast interviews. Everybody's got a very distinct interview style. I've lost count of how many podcast interviews I've done this year alone. I'm curious, because you've been on multiple podcasts, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't differentiate between radio and podcasts, and I'm not really sure. But yes, I've been interviewed many times.
What are the stark differences between being interviewed on radio versus television news segment and podcasts?
The most important differences are where the interviewer is coming from and what they're trying to get out of it. Some people are completely bought into cuddling and they want to share it with the world and they want to platform it. That's great. That's easy. They'll ask the best questions. They'll ask the questions that allow me to share the things I'm most passionate about, and they'll get excited about those things. Then there are other people who are incredulous about it. They don't believe in it. They're trying to pick flaws in it. They'll ask the sort of the sharp questions, which I then have to sort of gracefully deflect and get round to sharing the information that's really valuable to people and what they need to hear. On television, you've got to do all that while still appearing to be competent and calm. And my only task that I gave myself before the interview and for the duration of the TV interviews was to be grounded, be authentic. In the lead up to the appearance, I just sat on the sort of the couch off screen and just breathed long, slow breaths and stayed calm. For the RTV news segment, I did feel that initially there was some skepticism and they kind of wanted it to not be a real thing, or they wanted it to be a bit of a sensation. But then I actually hugged the news presenters, which you can't do over the internet. I hugged these news presenters live on television, and they kind of just didn't want to let go. And there was a transformation just right there on screen. From my side, I was confident that everything was going to work out. You know, I just have to go and be myself and do my thing, and people will come around to it. I think they kind of went a bit off script because they then have to figure out, how do we now do this news segment feeling the way we feel now compared to how we felt before we actually did the thing.
It makes me sad how people from major news publications would try to find flaws, because CPI, it has gained some traction. Cuddle Professionals International made it so that I think cuddle therapy can be included in health insurance in the UK. Am I correct?
That is news to me. I'll look into it because that would be very valuable. No, I'm not disputing it. If that is the case, then I need to find out about that. But so far, I haven't leveraged that.
I hear that some professional cuddlers partner with talk therapists. If a talk therapist has a patient whom they think would benefit from seeing a pro cuddler, they would have somebody they could refer them to. Is that something that you've ever done or looked into?
I've looked into it. I've spoken with a couple of talk therapists who are in theory on board, but we haven't actually ever converted and made it happen. The early days of my business launch, because I came up with all sorts of plans of like how I would put myself out there and things I would do. I spent quite a lot of energy at the very, very start reaching out to lots of different talk therapists in Bristol to try and set up this sort of relationship. It didn't work. I was completely new business with no clients at all. So they were rightfully a little bit skeptical about and just cautious about the whole thing. I had more progress now. More recently, they're seeing me and advertisements about what I'm doing, and they're seeing evidence and news articles about this actually happening. And now that they're coming to me, it's actually seems like it is a more realistic proposition.
It all comes full circle. I have never partnered with a talk therapist before. The idea is so daunting to me because I've always seen talk therapists as an authority figure. I'm like, am I ready to be an equal to these people? Like, I don't feel like I'm an authority figure.
You
What?
need more confidence. You do great things. You do really good work. And also at the end of the day, we're also all humans. You're equally valuable as a CEO who's making millions, equally valuable to as a human to a person who has no job at all. You are a peer. You are human. They are human. You support people. They support people. We just do it in different ways.
That melts my heart. I know you cuddle clients in Bristol. Have you ever seen clientele outside of that area?
Yeah, I do travel sometimes. I've been to London a couple of times, and I would go a little bit in the region. I don't have a car. It does limit my options a little bit. I'm open to it.
Are there more common archetypes that you find in Bristol versus London and vice versa?
I can't say that I've got that rich of a client base in London to be able to make any calls.
I haven't written this down. I do get very distinct groups of clientele at my home base versus in the Silicon Valley versus the Napa Valley. I don't know how familiar you are with the San Francisco Bay Area. It's a very, very populated place, and I definitely get a really large mix of people.
That's exciting. I mean, I think one of the things that's fascinating about this line of work is that humans are so diverse, but we all need human connection. And so lots of people find their ways into cuddle therapy in lots of different ways. It's not just one type of human that's doing it. There's all kinds of them. I love the range and variety and diversity of people that exists. And this is such a lovely way to get to know people. Yeah, it's a privilege.
I'm glad that I get to cuddle a diverse group of people, but I will say, I wish that cuddle professionals were more diverse. And I understand that it's something that not that many people know of. Of the people we do have, I mean, I get along with pretty much all of them, but I'm very often the only Asian person. I'm glad that since it's Pride Month, some cuddle professionals are coming out as non-binary, some are coming out as bisexual or pansexual, and that makes me so happy, but I still am a minority in a minority.
Yeah, very, very tough. What do you think the answer is?
I think more people in general just need to know of it.
Mm.
And I'm doing my part, making sure that other people, or that this is reaching wider and wider audiences. I try to cast a wide net.
Yeah, you're bringing lots of representation.
Well, thank you.
I'm obviously male-bodied. I'm gender fluid. I don't make a big deal about it. It's not something that I make a point of. I'm also bisexual, but again, not something that especially matters, especially professionally, because obviously it doesn't come into play. I feel it does give me a little bit more comfort with other male-bodied people. Hetero men can just get very like, yeah, depends. I get a lot of men who contact me to say, "Oh, could I be a cuddle therapist?" The answer is always yes, you could. It's possible. Anybody becoming a cuddle therapist is not the easiest journey. If you're a middle-aged white man who doesn't have lots of experience in this, then you have to do a really good job of establishing a lot of trust and safety and clearly communicating yourself and why you're doing this and how you're doing it well.
Which one did you start doing first? One-on-one cuddle therapy sessions or the cuddle workshops?
I was doing cuddle therapy sessions first. I mean, the thing about it, cuddle therapy in general, is that it's really easy to dive into. In the UK, it's not a regulated industry. I don't know that it's more strict in the US. You can kind of just say, I'm offering these services. And then if people hire you, then you start doing it, which is good in some ways, bad in others. We'll get into that. So it was very easy to launch into one-on-one sessions. Then it was really, a little bit later on that not too much later, just a couple months later that I offered my first cuddle party at a festival. It was really fun. I enjoyed it. I have a pretty long background in running and hosting workshops, holding spaces in general. It came very easily to me. Felt very natural. I found my space, just did a bit of advertising and it all fell into place. With these sorts of things, you really just need to try them and experiment. They won't work exactly the way you thought right away. That's fine. You just learn from your lessons and grow.
I know you're certified by CPI, but have you gotten any certifications elsewhere?
Yeah, sure. I have other certifications and things in my life. I don't have any other Cuddle credentials. I don't really, at the moment, see additional value in having a lot of credentials. Nobody asks me for my credentials, like clients or the government or anyone. Is there something to learn from other people? Possibly. I mean, I haven't taken the classes, so I don't know what the content is. I feel very well resourced currently, and it's working for me. I'm going to just keep going until I find a reason to change.
You are a wealth of knowledge. I have spoken to, I think, two people I've interviewed so far told me that they started out as an engineer. That's what they went to college for. But then they're like, you know what? I want to be my own boss. I don't want to take orders from another person. So a lot of the people I cuddle, especially in the Silicon Valley, are engineers. So I do wonder if having an engineering background would help me understand them better. But I do think I'm a pretty good cuddler and an open-minded person.
I don't think you need an engineering degree to do this. I don't know what your background is, but I think it's done fine at getting you where you need to be. The way I see engineering is, on the one hand, it does help you. It exposes you to a lot of skills and specific knowledge, which is fine. But all of that stuff is available on the internet, and you would learn it in practice anyway. It's more the philosophy of accepting and just being very intuitive about the idea that everything is understandable. You can break everything apart into its component parts, understand how it works, and then build it back up again. That applies to like mechanical things. Like if your oven breaks, you're like, okay, well, somebody designed and built this oven. If I take it apart and I look inside and I see the bit that they designed which isn't working properly, then I can replace that. Somebody bought it somewhere, so I can buy it and I can put it back in and put it all together again, and then it'll work. And I apply that then to emotional situations as well, or like interpersonal situations. We're communicating and you believe something and I believe something, and we've said some things, but it hasn't landed properly, obviously, because there's been a disagreement or there's been a misunderstanding. Where was the breakdown? Can we go back in? Can we find that problem piece, and can we fix it by saying something different or by explaining something in a new way? And then once that's repaired, we can patch the whole thing back up and then patch the relationship up, and now we're on level ground again.
I'll admit I have not been to a cuddle party in quite some time. Back when I was going every single month, there was not that much overlap between the professional cuddlers in my region and the people who go to cuddle parties. There were times when I would talk to other professional cuddlers like, hey, we only know each other through the internet. Let's meet up. How about we meet up at a cuddle party? But then we all have conflicting schedules. I'm curious if there's a lot of overlap in your region, or if there's like a distinctly, these are the cuddle party people and these are the professional cuddlers.
So there aren't a lot of professional cuddlers in my area. The ones that I know of have been to my parties and have enjoyed them, and I would go to their events if they held them. There are other people who are working kind of in embodied connection in Bristol. I consider them peers. It's similar to the work I do with connections coaching as well. We have a professional working relationship with each other, and we're friends too. We have working groups where we try and collaborate on workshops, and we give each other support and feedback. We try and help each other, like sharing their advertising, and we're actually it's early doors and nothing is confirmed or planned yet, but there's an idea to host an embodied relating or an embodied connection festival, or certainly a day at the end of the summer or start of the fall with these people in Bristol. So maybe watch the space for more info on that.
That sounds exciting. I do put myself out there a lot on the internet, but I don't think you can really compare that to putting yourself out there in person. Through my research, I am finding out so much about people who put themselves out there at festivals, at conventions. I'm hearing about professional cuddlers literally reserving a booth at their local farmers market and just shaking hands with people and telling them about cuddle therapy in person. And I'm so proud of them, but also it's like, I don't put myself out there in person like that. I want to put myself out there in person, but it's scary.
That sounds like an edge to explore. You can start small. It doesn't have to be very official. You don't have to invest a lot of yourself and energy in it. So one thing that I do fairly regularly is I bring a free hug sign out to the city streets and I offer free hugs. It's very low investment. It's very easy to do. And people know, they understand that. They've seen it before. This is not like groundbreaking to them. They know what to do. And if they're not into it, they'll just walk on by. Lots of people stop. Some people stop for a conversation. Some people try and understand like what's going on. I tell them like, okay, on the one hand, like I just want to do this because it's a nice thing to do. And like if you just want to stop, have a hug and move on, if that helped you in your day, I'm happy with that. as a professional cuddler, I am also advertising. Here's my flyer and these are my events. And if you want to know more, then let's chat about it. So I did something that was very edgy the other day, but I'm really happy that I did it. I run a workshop called How to Meet Strangers on the Dance Floor, which is something I'm very passionate about. You go to a festival and it's very easy to like chat to someone at the bar or in the queue for the toilets. Somehow when you're on the dance floor, you're like doing your little shuffle in the corner and you're like everyone around you looks like they're having a great time. It's like, how do you even like begin to approach them? I don't have that problem. I love dancing with strangers and I can go from like not knowing anybody on the dance floor to like being a local celebrity on the dance floor and like having had really, really nice dances and flowy things with lots of different people. And as an engineer, I've broken that down. And so I figured out how to then offer that as a workshop and teach other people to do it too. And people have had really, really good results with that. I've done it at festivals. I did this workshop last week and people said, this has changed the way that I approach the dance floor, which is great. I'm really, really proud. So the thing that I did, which was very edgy, was I took my sign to a local park and I said, would you dance with a stranger? And I had music playing and I was like going up to people who were just living their dang lives, not interested in other people at all. And I was like asking them like this question through movement, through using the sign. It was imposing to a degree because if they were not into it, I would just move on and wasn't like stepping all over their lives. When they did engage and they were sort of trying to understand like what's the situation here, what's the deal, and then I was like marketing to them. It was exactly like you say, it was like public speaking, it was like representing my brand and myself. It was a whole other thing. Much easier to just go up to a person who's already dancing at a festival and really into it than it is to go up to a person who's chatting to their friend in the park over lunch. I'm glad I did it. It was good for me. It's good growth.
My mind is blown. Unfortunately, the hour is up. That went by so quickly. I think now is a good time to stop. Plug whatever you want to plug.
So my website is embrace-connections.com, or you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Embrace Connections. I do cuddle workshops. I do these dance workshops. I do lots of different connection workshops in and around Bristol. I do cuddle therapy. I do connections coaching, helping people learn how to relate with each other better and just feel more comfortable in their relationships with partners or friends or family members or colleagues even. This is one that I'm trying to get into, which is team building and corporate company culture. Lots of different projects. I'm very excited for it. I'm so happy to have found my ikigai and to help humans connect better.
Wow, what a remarkable human being. Again, if you want to learn more about Treasure and Embrace Connections, please go to the description for this podcast episode. Thank you all so much for listening. If you're one of my patrons, thank you so much for monetarily supporting Pro Cuddle Hustle. This podcast is a passion project for me. I never accept sponsorships. Your patronage is not only supporting me, but the current and aspiring cuddle professionals who listen to Pro Cuddle Hustle. If you haven't already, please leave positive reviews wherever you tune in to this show. Perhaps I'll read your review in a future episode. Please follow Pro Cuddle Hustle on all socials: Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, Twitter. I'm the moderator of r/professionalcuddling. The subreddit only has about 100 members. Please join. Tell everyone on your socials about how important this cuddle industry podcast is. If you screenshot your review, put it on social media, and tag me, that will increase the likelihood of me reading your review. I also manage 2 different Facebook groups, Ask a Professional Cuddler and Professional Cuddlers and SW Only. Please only join the latter if you are a professional cuddler or sex worker. My email address is felicityazra@gmail.com. I am always accepting cuddle bookings. Screening and deposits are mandatory. Vaccination for COVID is required. Longer bookings will be prioritized. I accept deposits through Venmo, Cash App, and Patreon. This episode was researched by Felicity Azra. The audio and cover art for Pro Cuddle Hustle is edited by Felicity Azra. The YouTube video is edited by Felicity Azra. The thumbnail art for this episode is designed by Felicity Azra. The intro and outro music for this podcast is mixed by Nella Ruiz. I found her through Fiverr. Please go support her and leave her positive reviews. Catch y'all later. You have been listening to episode 30 of Pro Cuddle Hustle podcast.